So good morning and welcome everyone to our final Code Plus presentations. We are, as was just mentioned, the Demystifying Cloud Computing team at Duke. Our team consists of Moaz bin Kashif, Jai Hao, myself, Genevieve Jean-Pierre, Marisol Mata Nevarez, and Emily Sun. Actually, this morning, two of our group members could not be here, so it'll just be the three of us presenting, but we'll make sure to show all of our group members' hard work throughout these 10 weeks. So to begin, at our inception, the Demystifying Cloud Computing team started as a vision from administrators of Duke OIT. They had an idea to educate the Duke community about cloud computing, which is a pervasive new technology that's being used throughout all different industries and in academia as well. So it's important for people to know what it is and actually how to use it and get comfortable with it so that they can make their workflows more efficient. So another stakeholder of ours was actually Duke students, and that's grad students at that. So masters in interdisciplinary data science, for example, one of our project leads, Vicky Namasigwa. So they have stake in cloud computing because that's been an integral part of their curriculum. So throughout their learning process, they've come up with concerns that they've had, for example, with pricing, how it was kind of hard to navigate at first. So they gave us tips on things that should inform how we should go about educating the Duke community. But we were still left with the question of what is the best way of going about educating the Duke community about cloud, because there are several resources already existing. We could have made a web app, but there was no set outline final product that our stakeholders, our project leads had in mind for our project. So that was left up to us.
With this question in mind, we started our 10-week CoPost journey. We first dived into what is cloud computing, cloud services, cloud providers. We then went and focused on cloud education. From creating a web app, we changed to creating an EdSTEM course for the Duke community. And then we went to do some cloud projects that our community members can follow and replicate themselves. This includes machine learning on the cloud, and also we created a cloud stack, which we'll go into later. And also this presentation will end in the future of our project and also the future of cloud computing. So what is cloud? What is cloud computing? Cloud computing is essentially the delivery of IT services over the internet. It can be software, storage, VMs, infrastructures, and it is accessible from anywhere as long as you have internet. We created our little acronym for remembering this better. So cloud, computing located outside users' devices. Essentially, cloud is everything that you use without having to maintain yourself on your own device. And here are some examples of cloud computing in our daily lives, including Outlook, Google Drive, and the information that you have on your drive will be stored at one of the data centers that look like this one in the picture, which is in AWS, Amazon Web Services data centers.
So our first approach was to create a web app to act as a hub to host our educational resources. So we started by doing this by creating a React frontend and a Django backend, and then we moved on to containerizing the frontend and backend using Docker, which is also a very fundamental tool in cloud computing, as well as trying to create a CI/CD pipeline. So during this time, which was around week 2 and 3, we were unable to succeed with this pipeline, but when we later revisited this part of the project with a lot more knowledge on cloud computing, we were able to succeed in creating a pipeline, as well as creating a tutorial for how to do so. However, with this web app, there was still sort of a missing piece. How exactly could this web app be used to educate the Duke community, and what educational resources was it going to host?
So week 5, our goals shifted. We were trying to figure out what exactly we want to build. Were we going towards cloud education, or were we trying to build a website? So essentially we thought, instead of an app, what if we create an EdSTEM course, the ones that we used when we entered Code Plus to educate the Duke community about cloud computing. This is sort of like a full circle moment. We learned all these great technologies, coding languages, technical skills in the EdSTEM and Collab Roots courses. And now we're going to create one for our community. So here are a list of cloud projects that we included in our EdSTEM course. We covered services from the 3 major cloud service providers, Microsoft Azure and Amazon Web Services, and also Google Cloud Platform. We covered storage, app deployment, databases, creating VMs, virtual networks, and so many other services in our EdSTEM course. And here is what our final product looks like now. We also cover cloud consumption models, deployment models. If you're interested in what these things are, you should go into our admin course and explore it yourself. So here's a QR code for anyone who's interested. We'll also provide this to the audience at the end of our presentation.
So after creating this EdSTEM course, we wanted to branch out into more cloud-specific projects. So one of our first ideas was creating a cloud stack, or as we call it, a C stack, which is sort of like a template or package of cloud resources, similar to an app stack, which is a collection of app resources that could spin up either an app, a storage, a database, maybe all of the above. Normally, when we were creating our resources in the different cloud portals, they were all very time intensive, labor intensive due to having to specify certain services, parameters, all these little details. So we were planning on, in the future, we hope to host this C-Stack on the web, maybe perhaps even Duke's own virtual container manager or VCM. So in the Docker class at the beginning of Code Plus taught by Denai, we learned about checking out these containers on the VCM, as well as working with virtual machines. So our first approach to creating this cloud stack was through the virtual machines. However, by exploring this a little, we found it very slow to work with, as well as a bit difficult to test. So we decided to transition to a simple command line interface, which is also known as a CLI. And here's a demo of our proof of concept.
Okay, so we're going to be demoing our CLI, or command line interface application for deploying customizable ARM templates. So ARM stands for Azure Resource Manager. So we can just run this bash script. And first we get to log in to our Azure portal. Once we've logged in, now it's asking for our resource group name. So we can call this demo, and then our acronym Demystifying Cloud Computing at Duke 1. And we let it create the resource group. And now that our resource group is created, here are a list of options for cloud services that we can do. So I will pick storage account. I'll also create a container registry. And I think that's good, so we'll say done. And then now we give some parameters. So what will our storage name be? Use our acronym again, storage demo 1 and ACR demo 1. So now we just wait for it to deploy. Okay, so we see that our deployment was complete. And if we go into our Azure portal, just portal.azure.com, and we go into our resource groups. If we remember what we called it demo Demystifying Cloud Computing. And we can see that we have created our container registry and our storage account. We go here, we can check our deployments. This is called app deploy. We can see the resources that we deployed, and we can see that it was successful.
So how did we go about creating the CLI? So as specified before, ARM templates are, they stand for Azure Resource Manager. So in Azure, in order to use certain services, we have to create resource groups, and within these resource groups, create and pick our own services. So this CLI automates the entire process. As you could tell, we create our resource group by just simply providing a name rather than having to go into the console and picking out all these specific details. And as well as we can just pick out of the given list of services, we can pick which ones we want. Of course, this list is not exhaustive. We are hoping to expand on it to include even more of the Azure services. So to create this CLI, we use JSON, or the templates are formatted in JSON, and we also used Bash and Python languages to manipulate these templates and to automate the entire deployment process. So as you can see on this slide, we're hoping to maybe create a possible future UI. This is simply a wireframe where you can pick your resources as well as configure each individual resource.
So given our course as well as our C-Stack, we wanted to take it even further in different ways that we could educate the Duke community. One thing that's of interest nowadays is machine learning. And one of our team members, Moaz, had expressed at the beginning of the program that he was interested in doing machine learning in the cloud. And so faithfully, we actually got an email from Reese Payne, who is a Data Plus member, on, I think it was June 29th during week 6. And he was asking us if he could get our help on running his machine learning models, specifically natural language processing in the cloud. So with that, we went ahead and got started by using Azure's machine learning workspace in order to help him train his 1,500 images of handwritten text into actual text files. So we wanted to use cloud in order to speed up the process of doing so, because oftentimes training machine learning models can take quite a bit of time, especially with very extensive data sets. And with his, it could oftentimes take up to a week for training his models. So with the cloud, he asked for our help and we came to his rescue. So in a way, with the way we went about doing this was in 5 steps, really. We started by creating a virtual network, and that was in order to mount Azure Blob Storage to a virtual compute instance. And that was in order for the machine learning models to be run inside the cloud. We then went on to create an Azure machine learning workspace, because this is where the compute instance would be hosted. We then created the actual compute instance, which was allocating GPU space or graphical processing unit space in order to train those models. And then we connected the compute instance to our VS Code, because VS Code is everyone's favorite coding editor, so it makes the mounting process easier. And the final step was to mount the Azure files to the actual compute instance. So we made use of Azure's network file sharing in order to get the files that were within the Azure Blob Storage to be trained in the virtual compute instance. So along the way, within our 3 components of our project, the course, the C-Stack, and the machine learning within the cloud, we came across a few challenges. One of the first one was cloud familiarity, because none of the team members had any experience with cloud prior to coming to Code Plus. So we had to learn and teach ourselves about cloud, all the different service providers and how to do things within them before we could teach other people about it. Secondly, cloud security is another thing. We dealt a lot with things like access keys and protecting our personal information. And so based off the mistakes that we made, we had to make sure that we educated people using our documentation in our course not to make the same mistakes that we did. Thirdly is pricing, because cloud is not free. It actually has subscription models, oftentimes on a pay-as-you-go basis. But that still can incur costs if you're not careful. So we also had to make sure that we made our users aware of that in our course. And then finally is range, because cloud is like an open sea of so many different projects and things that one can do. So we wanted to prioritize and focus on very fundamental things that to get people started, and then so that they can branch out and explore based off of their interests.
Here are our takeaways from the project. From that, knowing what the cloud is to creating our own EdSim course on it, we really made a lot of documentation and tutorials as we're learning and experimenting stuff. So we want to make sure that our tutorials and documentation are accessible and easy to follow. So we learned the importance of accessibility and also replicability, making sure that our audience can also do what we did. And our 3 deliverables are also our main products from the projects. We also gained a lot of familiarity with the 3 leading cloud service providers, having experience with a lot of their services. We also learned about effective communication and group work, because we had to learn a lot of content in different fields, machine learning, cloud services, the C-Stack. So really communicating well and doing group work is essential to our project.
So given that, some future steps that we have in mind, since we were the first cloud computing team at Code Plus, but we don't think that we'll be the last. We think that improving our C-Stack to be more specific with the pre-configured cloud environments and tailored to different people's wants and needs, whether they're a Duke student in a CS class that wants to use cloud to make running models easier, or if they just have an open interest of their own that they want to learn something independently. We want to make sure that we increase the accessibility and the ease with which that they can spin up these different cloud environments. We also want to create an actual application to host our C-Stack on, whether that be hosting it on VCM or making our own separate web app. We want to make that as well. And finally, we want to expand our EdSim course and possibly teach it as a roots course in maybe the fall or spring semester, so we can kind of give back in a way. So that wraps up our presentation. We just want to say thank you to all of our project leads, Alexis Sparko, Vicky Namosigua, and Chris Hamilton, because this would not be possible without them. And yeah, are there any questions?